This next section, we're going to talk about the pathogens in our food. You will be able to distinguish a foodborne infection from foodborne intoxication. We're going to talk about the types of bacteria that commonly cause foodborne illness. We'll look at how viruses, molds, and parasites can make us sick, and how careful food handling can prevent foodborne illness. So you need to know the difference between an infection versus an intoxication. Foodborne infection is usually involves consumption of a large number of pathogens that infect the body or produce toxins within the body. We know that any foodborne illness caused by consuming a food that contains toxins produced by pathogens would be an intoxication. So an infection, the pathogens multiply in the human body. A large number of pathogens cause an infection or produce toxin. And foodborne intoxication is caused by consuming food containing toxins produced by the pathogens, and can be caused by food containing only a few pathogens if they've produced enough toxin. So where does the bacteria in our food come from? It's present in the soil, on our skin, on most surfaces of our homes. So it's in the food we eat, and most are harmless and some are beneficial, and a few are pathogenic, causing foodborne illnesses or foodborne intoxication. So let's talk about some specific bacteria. So here it's listing Salmonella. This is the most common cause of U.S. foodborne illness. It's usually found in poultry and eggs. Contaminated meat and dairy products, seafood, fresh produce, and cereal have all caused outbreaks. It's usually prevented by heat. The heat eliminates the Salmonella, and so it's important to thoroughly cook foods likely to be contaminated. So my kids always ask me, I want to eat the cookie dough that has raw eggs in it. And, you know, the big issue is not eating raw eggs because of the risk of Salmonella. It's on the shelves and can be throughout, even into the liquid part of the egg. So it's important that children eat cooked eggs because they are at that risk, higher risk of getting the Salmonella bacteria, which can make them very, very ill. Campylobacter jejuni bacteria is a leading cause of acute bacterial diarrhea in developing countries. And common sources are undercooked chicken, unpasteurized milk, cheeses made from unpasteurized milk, and untreated water. Prevention is it grows slowly in cold temperatures, and it's killed by heat. So keeping food refrigerated, not thawing food on the counter in the danger zone, and making sure that food is cooked. So careful storage and thoroughly cooking foods is how we prevent getting this bacteria to prevent infection. E. coli, Escherichia coli, that's one we hear a lot about. It's a bacterium that inhabits the GI tract of humans and animals, and when it comes into contact with food through fecal contamination of water or unsanitary handling of food, people that don't wash their hands after they go to the bathroom. Some of these E. coli strains are harmless, but others cause serious foodborne infection. And one strain of E. coli found in water contaminated by human or animals' feces is often called the traveler's diarrhea, and another strain of E. coli produces toxins in the body that cause abdominal pain, bloody diarrhea, and in severe cases, a form of kidney failure, which is terrible. And common sources are any fecal contamination of water or food. So important hand washing and cooking and refrigeration as well. Listeria monocytogenes bacteria, so Listeria. It's been in the public spotlight since some kids in the early 90s were died due to contaminated hamburgers from a fast food restaurant chain. We know that thoroughly cooking hamburgers would have killed the bacteria that caused the deaths. I'm sorry, I'm still talking about E. coli. Let me go back to that. So, E. coli can also happen from like ready-to-eat salads, things that typically aren't cooked that are set out. So E. coli is one of the most common, that's why the book goes into it quite a bit. So let me go back to Listeria. So Listeria, when I think of Listeria, I think of pregnant women. Pregnant women are often advised not to eat things like hot dogs or lunch meats. Listeria causes flu-like symptoms and can cause spontaneous abortion and stillbirths, fetal meningitis, and some blood infections. It's common everywhere in the environment. It survives and grows at refrigerated temperatures, so it very often infects ready-to-eat foods like hot dogs and lunch meats and unpasteurized dairy products. That's why women who are pregnant are very much advised not to eat any of those foods unless they're cooked. Vibrio vulnificus bacteria, that's a GI, you get the same GI upset, but can be deadly in people with compromised immune systems, and it commonly grows in warm seawater and raw or undercooked shellfish, particularly oysters. So a lot of us in Florida, we've learned some of the rules about eating oysters, of when you can and can't eat oysters. A lot of us know that the incidence of this infection is higher during the summer months when warm water favors growth. So you may have heard, don't eat oysters in any months without an R, because those are typically the summer months. So how does bacteria contaminate our food? This graphic shows all the different ways pathogenic bacteria can enter the food supply. We know in poultry farmhouses, large numbers of chickens in gross proximity, and they infect thousands. One infected infects thousands of others, and we know that salmonella can infect the ovaries of the hens and contaminate the eggs and the shells before they're even laid. So in the formation, so that bacteria are present inside the shell when the eggs are laid. That's definitely why eggs should never be eaten raw. We know in processing plants on the right, Salmonella and Campylobacter from infected birds can be transferred to the meat of healthy birds. So you've always got to handle raw chicken as if it contains a pathogen already. We see the child there milking a cow. So Campylobacter can be carried by healthy cattle and by flies on farms. So as a result, the bacteria are commonly present in unpasteurized raw milk, and that's extremely popular at farmers markets nowadays. But I would highly recommend you never consuming unpasteurized milk. It's a common source of Listeria, especially for children. We know that during the pasteurization, the milk is heated to a temperature that's high enough to kill both Campylobacter and Listeria. So avoid products made with unpasteurized milk. That is not a good thing. and you will reduce your risk of Campylobacter and Listeria infections. So ground beef. We know that the E. coli can live in the intestines of healthy cattle and contaminate meat after slaughter. E. coli contaminated meat that comes into contact with a grinder may contaminate hundreds of pounds of ground beef. This contaminated ground beef is a particular concern because the pathogens are mixed throughout during the grinding rather than remaining on the surface as they do on steaks or chops. And then the E. coli on the outside of the meat are quickly killed during cooking, but those in the interior side survive if the meat is not cooked thoroughly. So that's why there are recommendations to cook ground beef to well done, because if it's raw on the inside of that ground beef and you're just activating all that E. coli, it's not being killed. We see that the green leaf vegetable there, we know that E. coli bacteria can contaminate fruits and vegetables if they're fertilized with raw or improperly composted manure or irrigated with water containing untreated sewage or manure. And produce may also be contaminated by wash water or through direct or indirect contact with cattle, deer, or sheep. So thoroughly washing your fruits and vegetables can reduce the number of pathogens, but does not make them pathogen-free. Staphylococcus aureus is a foodborne intoxication. Toxin causes vomiting very quickly after ingestion. It lives in the human nasal passages and is transferred to food through coughing or sneezing, and can grow on food and produce a toxin. Clostridium perfringens is a foodborne infection and intoxication, and what happens here is little oxygen gets to the center of large containers, providing a growing environment for these bacteria that live in low oxygen environment. So they form heat-resistant spores that make it difficult to get rid of them. So this is an issue. Botulism, or Clostridium botulinum bacteria, we know is very bad foodborne illness, causing respiratory failure, death, and serious abdominal issues. And this is found in these spores are found in the soil, water of animals in their intestinal tracts. They also grow in low oxygen, low acid environments, and we usually associate botulism with canned foods, and because it's a perfect and growing environment. That's why that suggests that you do not use dented or bulging cans. If you find them at home, this can be deadly, and get rid of them. So this is just a picture of where we could potentially find botulism. Infant botulism is most likely, infants have very difficulty, we've talked about this in the last chapter, processing the spores of botulism, and we find it in honey, actually can cause death, so never feed honey to infants under 1 year of age. Viruses. So let's talk a little bit about viruses in food. So unlike bacteria, the viruses that cause human disease don't grow and reproduce in food, only inside our cells, and turn our cells into virus-producing factories, and they can cause, we know that viruses that cause human diseases cannot grow and reproduce in foods. They do it in their bodies. So here we see someone consumed a raw oyster, gets in the GI tract and attaches itself to the cell wall, and then it starts reproducing itself and makes us sicker and sicker. Common is the norovirus, about 50% of all foods. So the stomach flu virus, this is what we see on the cruise ships. And this is from hand-to-mouth contact, and we know that cooking destroys noroviruses. Hepatitis A, that's also a virus, comes from feces and can get in our water and food supply.